There are more negatives to joining a gym than just the cost, and if you get it wrong, the impacts could be severe. In today's video, we're going to be discussing many of the frustrations that you can face when you join a gym and the impact that could have on your long-term progress. So, stay tuned. Hey there, thanks for joining me in yet another of these videos that have been created to accompany the gym paradox, the pros and cons of joining a gym. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos, or if you haven't checked out that original article, I will leave a link in the description below. You can go and check it out there, and you can check out the other videos on this channel when you get the time, or if those questions happen to arise for you. Now, the purpose of these videos is to ensure that we can go delve a little bit deeper into each of the headings within that long piece of content, but in a way that is a bit more digestible. You can always just stick this video on in the background, listen to it at your leisure, and pick up the bits and pieces that you need to make the right decisions for you moving forward on your fitness journey. One thing that I've not done in the previous videos is asked for people to like and subscribe to the channel. If you wouldn't mind doing that, that would really help me out. And if you really want notifications as soon as these videos go live, hit the notification bell and it'll just pop up on your phone as soon as we load up a new one. And there will be many more to come. We are intending to do a lot more content on this channel. When it comes to the disadvantages of joining a gym, you might think there's only one, and that's the initial outlay, the cost. And if that's the case, then I'd invite you to think again. There's a bit more to it than that, and it could be costing you an awful lot more in the long run if that's the decision that you make, that you're basically going to invest a little bit of money, see how it goes, and if it doesn't work out for you, you've not lost an awful lot. That's why budget gyms are so popular, because the risk is so low. But when the risk is that low, the return on investment is usually quite low as well. And we'll discuss why that is in some of these points coming forward. But imagine the scenario. You join a gym, you go, you try to make the most of it. You're so frustrated by the facility or by the impact of going to that gym that it really puts you off going. Over the next couple of months, you hardly ever go, if at all, and then eventually you cancel your membership. It may well be that it just wasn't the place for you, or it wasn't the right environment for you at that time in your progress. And if that's the case, what it may end up doing is when it gets to the point where it could have been the right selection for you, the right tool for you, then you're put off. You don't want to go back. And that's going to do you more harm in the long run, because now you're sullied by the idea of going to a gym. You never want to go back to one. You start telling people how you tried it and you hated it. It's a good excuse, because training is hard. But it's something that internally you just feel that you don't want to be going there. And it could just be that you made the wrong decision at the wrong time and you didn't evaluate the disadvantages at the time, so that you weren't aware of them or you weren't prepared for them when they hit you. So that's what we want to cover in this video. Each of the disadvantages, or some of the main disadvantages that come up when you join a gym. So let's start with one of the obvious ones. Now, if you've ever been in a gym, or you've been a member of a gym for an extended period of time, you're bound to have experienced the crowds. Most gyms have the same business model. Not all gyms, but most gyms have the same business model. And it's more based on selling over service. The sardine model, or sardine tin model, where they're trying to cram in as many people as possible because they want the biggest return for their investment as possible. Now, that's just a business model, and it's a business model that clearly works. The problem with it is that it's not there to serve people. And the reason that I know that is because when you look at the stats of most of the major chain gyms in this country, they're based on the idea that most of the members, if not a large proportion of the members, never show up, or they don't show up on a regular basis. And if they did show up, the building wouldn't be able to accommodate them. Now, I'm aware of one gym where the uptake rate, the number of people who come on a regular basis, is less than 20%. Now, have a think about that for a second. 1 in 5 people turn up and use the gym. 4 out of 5 people pay their membership every month, but never show up. Now, this is meant to be a service-based industry. We're meant to be here to be helping people. So 4 out of the 5 people are never showing up, but it's costing them money every month. it's still not serving them. It's not doing anything for them. And the chances are that it is having a negative effect on a lot of those people, because it is a budget gym that I'm talking about. And in a budget gym, people have usually gone to a budget gym because they don't have the money to spend on a personal trainer or a coach or a more luxurious facility. They've gone to this because money is important to them, but yet they're spending this money month in, month out, and never taking advantage of the service. And why is that? Well, quite often the crowds are one of the biggest problems. So imagine all those 80% of people who don't turn up decide that they want to turn up on any given day. Well, that might happen round about New Year time, and it might happen somewhere near the start of summer. Not all, but quite a lot of them might show up for a few weeks. And if everybody shows up at once, suddenly, well, if everybody showed up at once, they wouldn't be able to get in the building. It would be a fire risk, so it would be unattainable. There'd be a queue out the door. But if a large chunk of them all turned up on the same day, suddenly they can get into the building, but actually using the place becomes incredibly frustrating. And it's that frustration that's the biggest problem. First of all, even if you are a regular gym goer and you know how to navigate yourself around these crowds, it could still be stressful to you. You're walking in with a plan and now you're not able to execute that plan. That's a stress. And that stressor is going to cause a hormonal shift inside you. And that hormonal shift is going to have a negative impact on whatever it is that you're trying to achieve from that facility. If you're trying to burn fat, your ability to burn fat decreases. If you're trying to put on muscle, depending on the stress levels, it might hamper it completely. You wouldn't be able to put on muscle no matter how much effort you put into it. Keeping in mind that you joined a gym in the first place in order to help you on your journey, if you're getting a negative impact, something that's physically holding you back, then that's hardly positive, is it? It's hardly helping you move forward. So it might only happen a few times out of the year, but if it does happen, it's going to be a negative impact. And it's something that's worth keeping in mind, especially if you're someone who doesn't really like crowds. I'm one of them. I don't like being in crowded environments. I don't like going to big concerts. I've never been to a festival. I don't even like going into crowded shops. It's just something that's inbuilt within me. I will avoid them if possible. I can do it. I can go into them if I need to, but I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable. And if you're someone that doesn't feel comfortable in that environment, then if you walk into it and then you leave, when it's time to go again, then you're going to find any excuse under the sun not to go. Oh, Auntie Molly, you need a lift to the shops? Absolutely, I'll need to do that. I'll just have to miss the gym today. You just come up with any excuse whatsoever not to go because it's uncomfortable. And why would you want to go and do something that feels uncomfortable to you? Leading on from that is access to equipment. Now, under the positives, I did discuss the fact that one of the major positives and the value added part of joining a gym is you're basically involved in a timeshare for all this high-end equipment. So the equipment that you're able to get access to is of much greater value than you could ever buy yourself. And you can get a lot more variety and a lot more space, as we've already discussed. But if it's not available to you because the crowds are so high that all that stuff's being used, or even if the crowds aren't that high, even if there's only one other person in, but they're using the piece of equipment that you want to use, then that could be a problem, especially if you don't really know what you're doing. So this is where somebody new to the gym walking in for the first time, they might have been given a program, and that program tells them they should be doing exercise A, B, C, and D. And then they walk in and the equipment for exercise A is in use. What do? And it's completely understandable that they don't know whether or not they can skip to B and just go on and come back to A, or does it have to be done in sequence? And if you're in a situation where there's quite a lot of people in and a lot of the stuff is being used, it may well be that A, B, C, and D's equipment is all being used and they don't know what else to do at that point, and there's no one there to help them. And especially if there is a big crowd, even if there is one person on the gym floor going around helping people, chances of you being able to get the advice that you need is going to be quite low, and it might be quite flippant and off the cuff, and we'll come back to that in a minute when it comes to the service that you're going to be provided from the people on the gym floor. So yes, the equipment could be very valuable, and it's way more valuable than anything that you could get from your membership cost if you were to buy it to yourself. or for yourself. But if you can't get access to it, it's useless. You'd be as well just flushing the money down the toilet, because all you've done is walked into a building, you don't know what you're doing. You might do some stuff. If it's not stuff that you know what to do, you end up hurting yourself, or you just end up walking back out the door again and you're getting nowhere. So the equipment is only valuable to you if you can get access to it. And with too many people in the building, quite often, access is a problem. So you end up in one of two situations. Well, actually, one of three situations. Situation one, you walk in and you want to follow through in your sequence, but it's all being used. So you have to sit and you wait. You wait for the person to be finished. Usually the common phrase is, "Are you nearly done with that?" And that person will then tell you how many sets they've got left, or they might even invite you to set in, and then that might be okay. But it starts to become a frustration and it's holding you back. What that's costing you is time. And what I'd invite you to look at here is, how much is your time worth? Because if you're only paying, again, I'm going to use the example of £20 a month, because that is kind of the peak end of budget gyms. If you're only paying that, that's less than £1 a day. And if you're walking in to do a 45-minute workout and it suddenly takes you an hour and a half because you're having to wait for each piece of equipment, you've wasted 45 minutes every time you show up at the gym. Is 45 minutes of your time really only worth £1? Whereas if you moved somewhere else, even if you paid double the money, you might not have those queues, you might not have those crowds, you might be able to access the equipment, but you would save the time. So it's something really worth thinking about before you make that decision to invest in a particular facility. Are the crowds going to be so bad that you're not going to be able to use certain pieces of equipment? It might well be that what you actually need at that point is just some space to be able to do some mobility work, and you don't really need a whole lot of equipment. So really all you're looking for is, does the facility have enough space? But if you're looking for key pieces of equipment, and when you went to do your tour, you thought, they've got a trap bar, they've got a power cage, they've got a seated row machine, whatever it is that you need. Other facilities maybe don't have these pieces of equipment, but this facility has it. If they've only got one, it's worth checking whether or not that piece of equipment gets used frequently, or whether you're going to be able to access it whenever you need. So access to the equipment is extremely important. Adding to that, if the crowds are so vast and the equipment is something that you can't get to, it can lead to a very poor atmosphere in the gym. Now, we talked about that as being one of the advantages as well in the last video. A good atmosphere can really lift you and drive you along, especially if you're not feeling up to it. But if you're in a position where you're walking in and everybody is guarding the equipment like it's made of gold because there's so little available, so the person that's in the squat rack doesn't want to leave it because there's nothing else to go to, or the next part of their program isn't available to them. So they've got a barbell, they've got a squat rack, and they're going to hang on to that until they are finished that day. Somebody else has got a bench, they're not letting it up for anyone. That leads to a very poor atmosphere. Now it's every man for themselves, and the atmosphere level goes down. It actually feels like a hostile atmosphere. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You might feel that you need the buzz of the gym, but if you're walking into that hostility, it's really not going to feel that good. Now, when it comes to personalised advice and guidance, the quality of that advice is going to be crucial to your development. If you don't know what you're doing, or you're quite a novice, or you need someone to just sort of take you in another direction because things haven't been working for you in the past, getting good advice is crucial to ensure that you move forward optimally. But it's not the case that bad advice is just not going to move you forward. Bad advice could actually be detrimental to you. If you're given poor advice, you could end up hurting yourself, you could end up injured, you could end up frustrated to the point where you just give up entirely. If you're constantly pushing yourself so hard because the instructor that's given you the workout has made it way too hard for you, you destroy your nervous system time after time, and you just think that it's you that's the problem, but you're getting ill, or you're coming in and you're feeling flat every single time you go to train. That's not your problem, that's the advice you've been given. You could go and try and source the advice yourself and try and work it out for yourself, but that's going to take up so much of your time. So making sure that you get good advice is absolutely crucial to making sure that you optimize your movements forward. Quite often, if you walk into a gym floor and you see someone wearing the uniform, your assumption is that they know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing when it comes to health and fitness. And to a certain extent, that may be true. It's not like they know nothing. If they've got a qualification of any kind, they must know something about keeping you safe whilst training. However, I have taught the course. I've been a mentor to people moving through the personal training experience or the personal training qualification experience, and I've been an examiner for people trying to gain the qualification in the end. And what I can tell you is, from my experience, there are some people that come in with an incredible background of knowledge who have all the experience they need, and really what they just needed was a certificate to be able to show that they know what they're talking about. But on the flip side of that, there are people that I've had come through the doors to do the personal training course, and it may be the first time they've ever set foot in a gym. That's what we're talking about here as far as level of experience. Now, that's quite rare. Quite often, if somebody goes down that route, it's because they've been going to the gym and they've enjoyed it, and it seems like a career path that they might want to follow. But not always. Some people are just allured by the idea of easy money. That's what it looks like. You're just standing next to someone telling them what to do, and you get paid quite a lot for it as a personal trainer. That's what it looks like from the outside. That's not the case. But that's what they're being sold on. And when you're desperate for some kind of career path, then it's understandable why you would fall for that kind of marketing. But ultimately, if somebody does go down that path, they've paid their money and they work their way through the course, they get a qualification. The qualification as a fitness instructor really allows you to do one thing: create programs for people on a very basic level, showing them how to use equipment within the gym and stay safe. That's kind of it. It's not an awful lot more than that. A lot of the rest of the course is about legalities, about health and safety, and about code of conduct and all those kind of things. But fitness instructors, the course lasts in some cases 4 weeks. I've actually seen some that are less than that, but they're very uncredible courses. But then how are you going to know the difference? But generally 4 or 5 weeks is about all it takes for someone to get qualified as a fitness instructor. So what kind of level of experience and education do you think they're getting in that period of time? Not very much. But they're employed to be on the gym floor, and if somebody is just looking to be a fitness instructor, that's all they're looking for at that point in their career, then they're probably earning minimum wage or pretty close to it. They've got their uniform on, they're standing there representing the facility that you're in, and as a result, you think that they know what they're talking about. When they give you the program, it's likely to be incredibly generic. If you actually watch what one person gives to each person, you'll probably find the pattern is pretty much the same. It doesn't matter what they came in and said that their goals were. It's going to start off something like jump on a treadmill to warm up, or a cross trainer or something like that, do some stretches, go and do the weights, which will involve some machines, mostly machines for compound movements probably, because that's easier to teach. Then a few isolation exercises, bicep curls and tricep extensions, what have you. Then some core exercises and some more stretching, and off you go. And there'll be some cardio in there at some point where you're chucked in a treadmill for 15-20 minutes. It's pretty basic stuff, but it's safe, particularly if you're using machines, but you haven't really been thought about. Now, again, you might think that because you have gone from doing nothing to doing something, and you're going to go and do that something, doing it safely, that, well, at least it's something. It's better than doing nothing. However, if you end up in a situation where that's what you're being given and it's not right for you and you don't feel you're making progress, you might just get frustrated and you might give up. When it comes to personal trainers, some personal trainers start off by working on the gym floor. In fact, quite a lot of them continue to do that into their career. And you might get lucky, you might get someone who's incredibly experienced and is going to take you through what you need at any given time. But even at that, even if they are incredibly experienced, the time taken to evaluate you as a person, your movement patterns, your limitations, what your goals are, what's holding you back internally, all that kind of thing, it's just not going to happen. Because if you think about it, what you're paying in a membership versus what they're being paid for the hour that they're spending with you, or hours over time that they're spending with you, it doesn't stack up. They can't spend large, abundant amounts of time with any individual person, unless they just happen to be favoring someone and everybody else is getting ignored. So you're not going to get high quality, in-depth advice. And if you're given the wrong advice, it could be moving you in the wrong direction, or it could end up hurting you, especially if you're giving sort of notional advice, as in, say it was, let's do some squats, and you do it with a barbell, and then you're told to incrementally add weight to it, and you just keep piling the weight on every time you come in. By the time you've doubled the weight, which wouldn't take very long, if you start with a 20 kilo barbell and you want to add, even if it was only 2.5 kilos, but quite often it would end up being, say, 5 kilos every time you come in, it doesn't take long to get to 40. 4 sessions or 4 weeks or however long it is. And that might just be too much for you, but it's not been assessed and you end up hurting yourself. So you have to be careful about the advice you're taking. And if you're getting it for free, and effectively you are getting it for free in that situation, because a lot of times fitness instructors have been put on to show that that service is available. Now they can sell that to you when you come through the door. Yes, we have personal trainers you can book in for an induction and what have you, but it's not something that you're going to be able to access every time you're there, unless you're in a very high-end, very bespoke, very intimate setting. So if that's what you need, make sure that that is what you're going to get, and you're not just getting someone who's going to give you a fairly generic program, and if you want to expand on it, you have to pay an awful lot more. When it comes to personal trainers, you might end up hiring a personal trainer, but that's not your gym membership. So we're talking about here the advice you're going to get as part of your gym membership. When it comes to coaching, coaches aren't going to stand on a gym floor and look to try and help people. That's just not what we do. And personal trainers can do coaching as well, and that's getting into the psyche and the frustrations and the issues that are holding you back, or the limitations when it comes to just your movement patterns and all that kind of thing. That's not something that you're going to get from your induction on a gym floor. So lower your expectations when it comes to that. If that's what you need, a gym membership is maybe not the thing that you're looking to invest in. And if you can't afford to invest in something that's at a higher level, where it comes to personal training or coaching at that very intimate level, then save the money, because flushing that money down the toilet is probably better than spending it unwisely and not moving yourself forward and ending up frustrated and poor. Without someone to guide you through, that gym floor intimidation level is likely to be quite high for a lot of people, especially when you're starting out. If you're walking into a gym for the very first time, you've never been there before, you've never been in any gym before, the intimidation level is going to be through the roof for most people. If you're an incredibly confident person, that's great, but those kind of people are very rare, few and far between. But even if you have been in a gym before, but you're moving to a new one, it's a completely new environment to you. There's likely to be some nerves there. And that intimidation factor when you walk in, of feeling that you're walking into these people's environment, the people that you're seeing in front of you, that can feel very off-putting. And that's not helping your experience. Remember, you're joining a gym in order to get the tools to help you in your journey forward. Intimidation is not helping you in your journey forward. Now, it's something you can probably get over, and probably get over it quite quickly, but it is a factor. And again, if you are a beginner, if you're or even just a novice, and you don't really know what you're doing, and you feel that everyone round about you knows what they're doing better, you might feel a bit weird about trying something new or trying to work out the problems that you're dealing with. Walking in and you see everybody's squatting and deadlifting and, lifting big heavy weights. The idea of reining everything back in to work on postural issues or imbalance issues might just feel wrong, because you feel like everybody's looking at you now because you're only using 1 kilo dumbbells to work on your rhomboids or your mid traps or something like that, or your rear delts. And it's all rehab or for range of motion. It's got nothing to do with strength at this point. You might feel embarrassed or intimidated by what everyone else is doing, so you just don't do it. Then you end up doing stuff to show off or to feel good about yourself, or you just don't come back. So these things are definitely negatives, and they're worth looking out for. So walking into the gym, if you're going to go for a tour, walking in at the times you're likely to train and maybe doing it more than once in order to be able to see who's there and what it feels like to be on that gym floor might be something worth doing in the early stages. In the last video, we talked about how safe gyms can be when it comes to the equipment being fit for purpose, or other people just being around to make sure you're doing things right, or that you don't get trapped under a bar when you're bench pressing, like I had been in my early days of training. But when it comes to the sanitation of the facility, historically, gyms were really bad places to be able to, if you were looking to avoid catching the flu during the flu season, or just any influenza-based germ that's out there. And with recent issues when it comes to the pandemic that we all had to go through, I'm sure we're all much more conscious of germs than we ever were before. Now, I think a lot of people will end up just feeling like it was all very frustrating to be locked down. They want to be back to training and might be very dismissive of things. The facilities themselves might be, certainly for a while anyway, a lot more fastidious when it comes to sanitizing things and making sure things are wiped down and what have you. But what you can't get away from is the idea that the aerosol effect of any virus is a problem. So if you're in a tightly contained box, if you're in a little office and there's only 2 or 3 of you, it doesn't matter. The aerosol effect, the filling of that space happens quite rapidly. The bigger the space, the more people it takes to fill it up rapidly. But it will fill up eventually, no matter how many people are in there. Even if there's only 3 or 4 people, eventually it will fill up, but you might have to be trapped in there for several days. But that's what's happening. The particles are coming out of your mouth, they're filling the air, and the more particles that are in there, the more chance there is of it infecting someone else. But when you're talking about places where people are breathing heavy and they're sweating a lot, then that level goes up, and the droplets that are on surfaces and what have you, the number of those is going to go up an awful lot as well. And no matter how good you are at sanitizing things might get missed. So the more tightly knit the community, the better it is. But if you're walking into a large budget gym or a large chain gym where there are thousands of members going in there every week, then the chances of you catching something go up an awful lot. So if you're prone to getting ill, this isn't a good environment for you. Not only that, if you're new to training and you walk into a gym and your immune system might be okay-ish, you start training, you're going to start pushing your immune system down during the training process. Now, it may develop back stronger, but whilst you're at the kind of low ebb where you've pushed yourself pretty far, you're much more susceptible to catching something and for it sticking and not being able to fight it off, because your body's already trying to work on recovering from the stress that you've just put it through. So gyms are maybe not the best place to be if you're trying to avoid germs. Now, I'm not saying that that's something that you should completely avoid, but it's something to keep in mind. Joining a gym in the flu season is probably not the best place for you if that is something that is a concern to you. Joining at the start of the summer, maybe that's a better situation, but it's definitely something worth considering. And when you're looking at the facilities on offer to you, the ones that are busier, it doesn't matter about the equipment that they've got or how many different things they've got, if you're going to be able to access the equipment or not. As far as germs are concerned, the more people in the building, the more chance of you catching something. And that's something that could end up holding you back week after week after week, because you catch something, you recover from it, you feel that you've got to make up the time, you go back in, you push a little bit harder, you push your immune system down a little bit more during the training, you catch something else, now you're floored again, now you feel you're further back, and then until eventually you just get put off and you stop training altogether, at least for a while. So it's definitely something worth keeping in mind. So the takeaway from this, when you're looking to a gym to either join or move to, or even if you're a member of a gym and you want to take some time to step back and evaluate its value to you, don't do it blindly. When you're talking to someone during a tour, if you just walk in blindly and you go for a tour and a consultation, it's always going to look good, because you haven't gone in with any in-depth questions. You're just looking for a gym and you're saying, what do you have to offer? They're going to sell it to you in the best light possible. So unless you're going in with some very in-depth questions about how busy does it get at this time? Am I going to be able to do X, Y, and Z? If I can't, what can I do about it? Am I going to be able to cancel my membership? If I can't get out of this, what I want out of it? And if you can't and you're going to be stuck with it, why not? If you can't get out of it what you want out of it, why shouldn't you be able to cancel? So if what they're saying is you need to be able to evaluate it beforehand, and now you've made your evaluation, you're going to subscribe, you've taken your chance now, and you have to pay your membership through, then take the time to evaluate. Really take the time to think about, what do you need at this moment in time, and is this place going to deliver on it? It may well be that it looks good to you because it's going to do all the things that you're going to need it to do in the future. You want to be able to squat, and it's got squat racks and power racks and those kind of things. You want to be able to deadlift, and it's got bumper plates and high-end deadlifting bars, and it's got chalk, and you can really rip when you're lifting with a lot of noise and what have you. Or on the flip side of that, you're looking for somewhere that's a bit more intimate and a bit more quiet, and this is exactly the place that you're looking for. It's got the environment you want, but it doesn't really have the basics that you need, but you work your way around it. Rather than that, maybe look at what it is you need right now, evaluate that, and take that step. It might be doing some work at home, it might be going to a physio, it might be going to yoga classes, it might be something else, it might be working with a coach. Whatever it is, do that first, and don't use the gym that is going to be a benefit to you further down the line as something that you try and force into your lifestyle right now, because by doing that, you could end up putting yourself off for the long term. And then when you do need it, you don't want to go back. Now, there are a lot more disadvantages that I could go through. I could be listing these for a very, very long time. But I don't want to put you off the idea of a gym membership. Gyms, as I've mentioned before, can be incredibly valuable if you're in the right space and if you find the right place. What I'm encouraging you to do is have a look at what is on offer to you. And just because all gyms make you sign a contract, for example, and that's not the case anymore, but it used to be, or all gyms have the free-for-all kind of attitude where anybody can go in at any point and hardly anyone has a booking policy, or all gyms have the frustrations of being able to get on that piece of equipment because on Mondays it's International Chest Day and everybody wants to do bench pressing. Just because that's been the case for so long doesn't mean you have to accept it. Ultimately, these places are there to serve you. And if they're not doing what you need, don't keep giving them money and voting with your wallet to say, this is what I'm happy to put up with. If you're not happy to put up with it, let the place know by not being there. And if enough people do that, they will have to change. But keep in mind, the overheads aren't going to change. And it's going to cost a certain amount of money to keep these places open. So if you want it to be a bit quieter, you have to be willing to put up with the idea that you'll pay a little bit more to ensure that they can still survive as a business and have fewer people in the building. Think it all through before you make your decision. That's all I'm asking you to do at this point. Just take a few minutes, sit and reflect. What do you need? Don't just think, I need a gym, and hit Google and start looking for cheap gyms near me. And that's going to be the subject of our next video, cheap gyms near me. It's one of the most commonly Googled terms when it comes to looking for a new gym. So I wanted to discuss that phrase and the thinking behind it and why just that one Google term could be holding you back so much. We'll discuss that in the next video. But I hope this one's been valuable to you. Remember, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you've got any comments, please leave them below or get in touch with me directly. I'd love to include your stories and things in future videos. And until the next one, stay awesome, have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.